Podcast, your football content, all of it, the Premier League, EFL, WSL and all the international leagues. It was a bumper weekend, so we've got a bumper episode for you. My name is Jason Franklin and on the panel with me is Zaid Glover and Jamie McCready, and we're going to be talking everything football. So let's get straight into it. Should we start with Liverpool 2, Fulham 2, a big game in the Premier League and also a big game on the panel, given that I'm a Fulham fan, you're both Liverpool fans. So I'm going to ask you the question.
Oh, God.
Given the fact that you went down to 10 men after 17 minutes, 1-0 down, are you satisfied with a point?
You go first.
Oh,
Jamie.
I'd say definitely not. I think it was a very disappointing game. We drew Southampton the previous week, right? So we dropped points in 2 Premier League games in a row. It's not good enough. Obviously, we've got Tottenham this weekend. It's very, very difficult now to decide that game. And all of a sudden, if we were to drop points, the league is completely out of focus and touch for us. Obviously, we probably still will be top. I think let's focus on Andrew Robertson, if you wouldn't mind. Oh, my goodness gracious me. I've never... In these recent games, he's just been so poor. He's been so poor. And I think it's his time to go. Not because of that. I was calling for him to come off before he was injured. We've seen Slot play Simicast in recent fixtures for now obvious reasons. He's an experienced player. To make a challenge like that is not acceptable. But what would you make of the game?
I'm disappointed, especially in Andy Robertson. He's one of the leaders of this team.
Yeah.
And to go make a challenge like that, like you said, he's a very experienced player. He's making a silly challenge, put us down to 10 men early, and we've dropped points for me because of him.
Well, obviously, Fulham unbeaten in December, having played Spurs, Brighton, Arsenal and Liverpool. Three draws, 1 win. How would you say that?
I'm very happy with 6 points from those games. I think there were games in there that we could have won. Spurs, we should have really won before Tom Kearney got sent off. And then Liverpool... Obviously, I'm happy with the draw. You know, drawing to the league leaders, it's always a good result. But when you are a goal up, a man up, and leading twice, it is a little bit disappointing given that what could have been. You know what I mean?
It's at Anfield, though. You're not really...
I mean, I'll absolutely take it 100%. I think from a Liverpool perspective, a draw against Fulham... You expect to win, but I don't think it wouldn't come as a surprise. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you asked before the game, Fulham at home, you expect to win, but you know if a draw happens, so be it. And you know you're still top of the league. I think it's a good point. Whether you take it as a point earned or 2 points dropped, that's really the question.
I see it 2 points dropped personally.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the league table. There's a lot of teams that are in bad spells right now. Obviously, City being one of the main ones. Liverpool, 3 wins in a row. 3 wins out of the last 5. 2 draws in a row. Chelsea have obviously won their last 5. Arsenal have won 3 in a row. And the only other team is Bournemouth and Forest that I can see on here, which is true, that have won 3 out of their last 5. So a lot of teams are not in brilliant form. I see it as a 2 points dropped. I think it's very disappointing. When Jota came on, I don't know. He's a very good player, but he's very injury prone.
Yeah.
We're not looking for that at Liverpool. We're looking for players that can play week in, week out. Imagine it was Darwin Núñez, for example, who is constantly available, but has the goal scoring ability of Jota. I think we wouldn't be in such of a problem. However, I think you're very fair to make the analysis that Fulham are a very good team. To play Fulham is definitely, and to drop points is sort of respectable. However, we have to understand that we want to win the league, and Fulham haven't been in Europe for a long time. So there's a big difference between the clubs and their capabilities. And I think, as I said before, it's very disappointing.
I mean, I think the expectation for us this season is trying to qualify for Europe. You know, top 8 if the Premier League teams perform well. In Europe, it will earn that Conference League spot depending on what happens in the domestic cup competition. So I think going for 8th is a good target for us. Marco Silva, I've said it before, I don't see us getting battered with him in charge. I mean, the Wolves game, it's a fluke because we were 2-1 down and Joachim Andersen got injured. So we were down for 10 men for the last parts of the game, pushing for a draw, and we concede 2 goals. But pushing for Europe is definitely a possibility. I think we should move on to the Manchester derby.
Yeah.
The big game of the weekend. You may think Manchester City going a goal up. You expect them to be holding out 85 minutes gone. And then it all turns around. Manchester United winning a penalty. Amad Diallo winning it. And then Amad Diallo also going on to score the winner.
I've just added him to my FPL, so
Fair enough.
so I hope now he definitely performs. Obviously, Oliver was on the panel with this one last
Yes.
week. We were talking about this game, and we all made our predictions. I was saying that Manchester City really can't. They can't afford to drop more points.
And they've gone and done it.
And they've gone and done it. However, I was talking to, I think it maybe it had been you or someone else the other day, and I was talking about how City have not played, obviously, a lot of wins. They've not won in the last, what is it, one win out of 11?
One in 11.
And they're only a few points behind Liverpool. I mean, I know a lot of their games have been in the tournaments like the Carabao Cup and the Champions League, but is it really acceptable for us to only be a few points clear?
No, not really.
No, I don't think so. Obviously, City are 5th, 27 points.
Forest above them, aren't they?
Yeah.
Fourth after
Wow.
a big win for them against Aston Villa.
Yes.
What I want to talk about is a little bit swaying from the match.
Okay.
Before the Ballon d'Or was announced, people were saying that Vinicius Jr. deserves it. Now we've seen Manchester City without Rodri. Does that sway your opinion on whether Rodri deserves the Ballon d'Or or not?
I think Rodri's a world-class player. Like, don't get me wrong. I think he's a brilliant player. But there is a but, and I've told you the but before. Manchester City are a joke of a club if they're thinking that they can't survive a Premier League without Rodri.
One player.
One player does not, like, for example, Haaland's the best striker in the world. How many goals has he got in the last 11 games that they've lost? Or they've won one out of the last 11?
It's not many.
In
not
the
many.
league, I think he's not been
You've got De
scoring
Bruyne, you've got the best team in the world, right? And all of a sudden now Pep's coming out and essentially dissing some of his players, and maybe he thinks they're not world class anymore. But they've still got a world class team. They've got a lot of funding to be able to go and buy another Rodri. I know there's not a lot of them, but there's someone that could fill the void.
Yeah, they're looking at Zubamendi.
Really?
Yes.
That's an interesting one. I don't think there's a lot of players currently that I can point my finger on that would say City would be able to take them. But the excuse for Manchester City about the Ballon d'Or is that the City excuse is not about Rodri. They should have a better world-class player in that position already as a backup, as other clubs should do as well. Like a Valverde at Real Madrid or someone like that who's
They've
so versatile.
so much. They should have a good backup in every single position.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like, obviously, us being Liverpool fans, I don't really mind. Not a problem
I'm not
whatsoever.
complaining.
But speaking of the Ballon d'Or, I think that Vinicius Jr., because I was watching something online and it's about not just about how you play, it's about fair play. And we've seen Vinicius Jr. do some questionable things, such as throw the ball and have temper tantrums, which essentially is not role modelling for the next generation of football.
Exactly, yeah. I completely agree with you. I don't think Rodri, going back to Jason's point, I do not think Rodri should have won that Ballon d'Or whatsoever. It should have been Vinicius. But then the fact that when Real Madrid found out Vinicius was not winning it, they all didn't show up.
I mean, even Danny Carvajal, I don't think, showed up.
No Real Madrid representative
no
went.
one.
It's very poor. I mean, that must be like a poor club culture. You're not always going to be the big boys. There was a time a few years ago when Real Madrid were knocked out early in competitions and they weren't the one with the Ronaldo. They weren't the superstar team. They built that back very quickly. And Real Madrid are probably always going to be a very good team and a world-class team. But if you don't win a trophy, at least respect the ones that do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's talk about a moment that happens in the first half between Kyle Walker and Rasmus Højlund. A foul committed by Kyle Walker and a foul was awarded by Anthony Taylor. Rasmus Højlund squared up to Kyle Walker. They both went head to head, and with little to no contact, Walker goes down as if he's just been shot.
Yeah. If I was Kyle Walker, I'll be incredibly embarrassed.
It's embarrassing.
Has Kyle Walker come out and said anything?
No.
Well, he needs to because it's very poor.
Did you guys see what Rasmus Højlund said?
Yes.
Let me read it out here. Manchester is red, violets are blue. What a brilliant performance, but the Oscar goes to, and it's Kyle Walker picture.
I think with Kyle Walker, he's been subject to a lot of discrimination in the last few weeks.
Yes,
obviously, there's a few bad things that have come out. But we're going to talk on a football sense. The guy is over 30. Is he 33?
33, 34.
He's an England international. He's one of the leaders of the Manchester City dressing room. To lose his head like he did, not acceptable. To go up to a youngster by Rasmus Højlund, not acceptable. And to go down like a snowflake.
I mean, I just don't understand it. In the world of VAR...
Obviously, you being a referee.
Yeah. I understand it if there was no VAR at all, because maybe you could deceive the referee, get a red card to the opposition. I don't think it would be worth the suspension afterwards. But to do it with VAR, there's no way Rasmus Højlund would get sent off, and you're just making yourself look like a fool on
For no
TV.
reason, yeah.
Yeah. And Kyle Walker, we've spoken about him being a role model, about him being an English international where he was poor at the Euros. It has to be said.
Our worst defender, in my opinion.
Yeah, he let us down
The
a
fact
lot.
that Trent didn't play says something. But Kyle Walker, he hasn't been on it this season. And to just do that just adds... I'm not saying the discrimination is correct,
Okay, yeah.
but it just piles more and more pressure on you.
Exactly.
I think there's been a lot of stick for Pep Guardiola recently about his arrogance and the fact he doesn't want to change the team. I mean, if you still want to play Kyle Walker, doesn't matter who you are as a manager,
you're Rico Lewis.
you're ludicrous. You're
Is Rico-
absolutely
is
ludicrous.
He was suspended because of the second yellow.
of course. But like, I'm talking about in long-term future.
But it goes back to the whole thing about still got a world-class team. Why don't you change to 3 at the back?
Exactly.
Why don't you pay? Who was that guy that we did the 11-a-side thing? The Simpson guy.
Simpson, yeah.
Why does he not play? Why? At the end of the day, if you're losing that many games in a row, and these experienced players are meant to get you through the hard times, and they can't even supply you with a decent performance, they should be out the team straight away. And I'd be calling up the 17 and under 23 squads,
That's
whatever
what
they
it
have.
is. There's a lack of leadership in that Man
It's a
City
joke.
dressing room.
But Pep needs to come out and make a bold statement, because otherwise it's going to end with Pep Guardiola leaving at the end of the season.
Exactly. I completely agree, mate.
Well, there's a lot of Premier League talk. We could have this whole show about Premier League.
Literally.
But we've got a
I
lot
think
to get on with.
We'll have one more main focus. And for me, it was the biggest game of the weekend, given what it means for the relegation scrap. Wolves 1, Ipswich 2.
Ooh.
It led to Gary O'Neill being sacked, Vitor Pereira close to joining the club as manager. And there's been questions about Wolves on and off the pitch. Mario Lemina, we saw last week against West Ham, losing his head, therefore losing captaincy to Nelson Semedo. And
Did he lose it? I thought
he lost captaincy, yeah.
He lost
I
it.
thought it was
Yeah.
like mutual. Well, I guess they say that.
Which is interesting, because I wonder if the new manager comes in, if he will reimburse the guy.
Maybe, but there's also bigger problems as well. You had the situation with Mateus Cunha after the full-time whistle. And just Wolves in general this season has been a big, big mess.
Yeah, it's not looking good for them. This new manager, whoever it is, whether it's Victor Pereira, whether it's him or anyone else, whatever manager comes in, they need to hit the ground running immediately. Otherwise, it's not looking good for Wolves.
I mean, Wolves, their squad is talented.
Very.
They should not be 19th. The fact that they're there shows the ignorance of the Wolves board. Gary O'Neill, for me, should have been sacked in the transfer window, in the summer transfer window, because they were poor. They were poor towards the back end of the season. They barely won a game towards the back end of the season. You may argue that they won the beach, and that gives them a reason for them to be poor. But for me, I don't like Gary O'Neill as a manager. He took no responsibility whatsoever, and his man management is so poor. It's unbelievable.
It's disgraceful.
Do you two really have that much of a hatred against the guy?
I hate him.
I really like him. I really like him. He did a job at Wolves a few seasons ago before he got the Wolves job.
Bournemouth.
At Bournemouth, sorry. And I thought he came in and did a really good job. Obviously, he was at Liverpool, actually.
Yes.
I don't dislike him. I don't think he's a particularly poor manager. I get what you mean, where Wolves need to be in that step ahead. Obviously, Wolves were 7th in 2019. They finished 7th. They got, now it would have been a Conference League spot, but I think they were playing in Europe. They were. 57 points, obviously under a completely different setup and a new manager. And they finished the 7th the following year. I just believe that for Wolverhampton Wanderers, and I have the same argument about Everton, is both of their squads pretty good.
Yeah.
And they're not really performing. I'm not entirely sure if that's down to management. I'm not sure if that's down to a lack of morale. But this guy, Victor Pereira, who's looking to come in, who is he? Have you ever heard of him before this? No, have you? No.
Couldn't tell you.
I'm looking at the guy. He doesn't particularly look like the sort of guy Wolves are going to need in terms of what he's done before. I think he was managing over in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Do you want a guy coming from Saudi Arabia to come to the Premier League?
Didn't know he was coming from
Would
Saudi.
you accept Steven Gerrard at Wolves if you were a Wolves fan?
No.
There you go. Would you accept Victor Pereira? Probably not. So I think that's the thing Wolves have got to do. I mean, someone was saying Jose Mourinho. I think David Moyes is going to be linked with the job.
Definitely,
Sam Allardyce is out of it. No chance.
Sam Allardyce.
I mean, Solskjaer was in contention. He was present at the Wolves match.
For other reasons, though.
Yeah, because he's friends with Kieran McKenna. That's what it is.
But you never know.
Yeah.
You never know. Also, I just wanted to add that obviously Erling Haaland was running away with the Golden Boot this year.
Salah's caught up.
Salah's caught up. They're both on 13. And obviously, Cole Palmer's not far behind. Who wins that Golden Boot? Because obviously, Salah has been There'll be some games where you don't see a lot of him, but he still scores.
I know.
With Haaland, it's the Haaland show or no show. So who do you think finishes with the Golden Boot? 'Cause obviously, fourth place Chris Wood and Brian Mbuemo, 10 goals each.
Well, I mean, if Liverpool carry on this amazing form that they, minus the last 2 games that they've been on, and Salah keeps on performing like he has done, I can see Salah winning it because City just haven't been good enough. I can see Chris Wood as well. He's been very good. But Jason, go on. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, we've seen in the past where Man City just go on runs, but I can't see it with this squad. I think there's a real lack of leadership that we've already talked about. So I think Salah, the players at the hands of Liverpool, with so many creative players, with Salah being creative himself, I think he will win the Golden Boot in the end. But moving our focus back to the Wolves-Ipswich game, Ipswich scoring a last-minute winner. Do you lot see Ipswich staying up?
Not particularly. There's always 3 clubs that have got to go down. I think Ipswich will be the unfortunate ones. I would have preferred if Luton stayed up. Me being a Watford fan doesn't make a lot of sense. But I always like the team that comes up to stay up. I think that does really well for the league. I'm looking at it now, obviously Leicester and Everton. Everton have never been dragged into it too heavily. And then you go into really top clubs like Crystal Palace, West Ham, United, Newcastle. None of those teams are going to get relegated. Unfortunately, it's either going to be Ipswich, Wolves, Southampton or Leicester.
Well, I think we can all agree that Southampton
are
probably
down.
going down.
You never know. But yeah, I'd say so. Obviously, Russell Martin getting sacked. I was speaking to someone a few months ago, and I was trying to tell you this earlier, and I forgot who told me. But I was being told that it was like an insider, and I was being told that the guy's pretty arrogant, Russell Martin. And it showed. Obviously, we were talking about it earlier. The minute they were up in the Premier League, they were saying, so when you play City, what's going to happen? We're not going to change our team. Our team's going to be the exact same. We're going to go in and we want to build a Southampton style of play. Well, that is now going to get you relegated to the Championship. So congratulations, mate.
Out of a job.
I mean,
you've been sacked.
I think the arrogance of Russell Martin was shown by when he left for half-time before the half-time whistle had blown and James Maddison scored. He didn't even see the 5th Spurs goal going in.
Yeah.
We've been speaking off camera about who Southampton would bring in, the obvious candidates, Graham Potter, someone like that.
I don't think that would happen. I don't think
Potter wants his Chelsea money.
Potter's been very arrogant. The guy's incredible. Like, he has been offered a lot of roles, including the Ajax role. You name the other roles that he's been offered. I'm sure he's been offered a lot.
He was interviewed for the England job, was he?
Yeah,
not?
he was.
Yeah.
Well, supposedly he was. And the guy's very arrogant. He's not going to end up out there. I think Gary O'Neill. I genuinely think the guy's going to be linked with the club. I'm not sure if it's too early to go right back into another club, but he did something very similar at Wolves. There wasn't too much of a gap in between the two. So I'd be surprised if it happened, but I certainly wouldn't rule it out because I think Southampton would like an English manager. If I'm going to be completely honest, I think they're the club that prides themselves on having some sort of English background. That's just my verdict on it. Obviously, Russell Martin being an English guy. So I think, and they've got a lot of English players as well, but it'll be interesting.
I think what Southampton needs is a defensively disciplined manager to just go in there, because you can't be playing out from the back like that. Against Liverpool, we've seen mistakes. Spurs, Chelsea, we've seen mistakes so many times. You need to have that manager who is versatile enough to be able to play out of the back at times, but also boot it along when needs be.
Yeah, sometimes you've got to play Sean Dyche ball, as they say. Literally. Sometimes you have to. I do understand it, because I feel like if you want to play very defensively, I don't think you're ever going to win games. You're never going to want to be in the top 10 or the top half of the table. I do understand both parts of it, but I think he did it very poorly. I think he deserves to go, and he's definitely not fit for the Premier League just yet. Do what Frank Lampard did, go and study some other coaches, because he needs to change his style of play. He's not going to get another job in the big divisions too soon.
All right. Well, let's move ahead to next weekend. Obviously, there's Carabao Cup action midweek, but let's talk about the Premier League next weekend. Spurs versus Liverpool.
Ooh.
That could get quite tasty. We've seen some history in that fixture before. The
Last season.
The PGMOL mock-up. We've seen that. How do you guys see that game going?
Right. So, it's at Tottenham. And obviously, we know what happened last season. And we're not on particularly good form. I can see a world where Tottenham get a result, sadly. And I don't want them to get a result. I don't really like Tottenham. But there is a world they get a result.
I think Tottenham Stadium is a difficult place to go. I think Liverpool do struggle when we go there. My score prediction for that game would be a 3-1 win. I think Tottenham could be quite challenging early on, but eventually they sort of break themselves down.
I mean, what we've seen from Spurs, it's so inconsistent. They go from win to loss, win to loss. So I think Liverpool will win this, and I'm going to go with a 2-0 Liverpool win.
Fair enough.
Aston Villa versus Manchester City then, another big game.
Last season it was a big game. Villa have really been poor this season, but we're not going to talk about them too much. I don't know where to take this game really. I think it's at Villa Park, anything can happen. Yeah.
City will drop more points.
I mean, both teams have been poor as of recent. Score predictions, lads?
2-2. Another 2-2.
Oh, fair. I think you love a 2-2, don't you? I say 2-1 Villa.
Oh my! If that happens, I just don't know where to put Manchester. I think that is the biggest downward spiral a club will have if they drop points to Villa in the start that they will.
I mean, surely it has to end at some point.
I've been saying that for 10 weeks.
I thought it was over with Forest.
Yeah,
that's why I'm going to say 1-0 to Manchester City.
Can we talk about the Women's Super League now? Is that right? So let's talk about Leicester 1, Chelsea 1. Chelsea finally dropped points in 24-25 season. Tyler behind the camera has got some sort of emotions because there's a bit of flapping hands of going on back there. Obviously, Chelsea finally dropping points, but they still drew, so they haven't lost a game just yet. It's a 17-match winning streak that ended. The last loss was on the 1st of May to Liverpool, where Chelsea were pretty dominant. However, I have to admit, when was their last draw? Like, was that the last time that they had completely dropped points? It must be, right?
Yeah, 17 winning streak.
No, it's unbelievable, right?
In all comps as well.
Yeah, I know obviously Leicester aren't the best of teams, but Chelsea to go ahead and do what they've done. Obviously, Emma Hayes left at the start of the season. She was now gone to America, the best team in women's football.
Who is Chelsea?
Sonia Bonpasta.
Yeah, she's come in and done a perfect job. Wonderful job. Yeah. You couldn't have really asked for any
I think
much
she
more.
came from Lyon, who's like the best French team.
Yeah, they are.
So I guess that explains it. Leicester with 29% possession and only one shot on target. So
pretty ridiculous.
I guess Chelsea were pretty unlucky to drop points.
Oh, that's Sean Dyche ball, right?
Yeah, well, it has to. You've got to play some sort of ball. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, how many get relegated in the WSL? Is it 2? I think it's 2. Well, obviously Leicester are 11th, so they're 11 out of 12. You know what would be pretty nice to see 20 teams in the WSL? I know it's because of the lack of funding. There's such a big gap. But I know there's a lot of good clubs in there, like Newcastle, for example, aren't in the Women's Super League, but they've got a big budget. So it'll be nice to see. It'll be definitely a bit more competition. You've got the same clubs every year. You've got Chelsea, City, Arsenal, United that seem to do really well. It's hard. Tottenham's still a sticky situation, even in the women's side of the game. 11 points, 6th place, 6 points off the place above. So they look in a bit of a bad situation. It's hard because obviously Liverpool at 8th as well. They've got a £1 billion budget if they wanted to. So it's interesting. I think Chelsea doing what Chelsea do, really. Chelsea very dominant. So
absolutely. Let's move on to the Championship then. Sheffield United 2, Plymouth Argyle 0. Sheffield United moving 3 points clear at the top after Leeds dropped points. Plymouth Argyle remain 23rd. It is looking bleak for Wayne Rooney's side.
Yeah. I mean, you don't watch a lot of the Championship.
I don't watch a lot of Championship.
Okay, so with Wayne Rooney's side, they are kind of predicted to be in the relegation scrap. So for people to kind of put a lot of criticism on Rooney is essentially saying that because he is Wayne Rooney and he is him, not in a managerial sense, he is Wayne Rooney, they think that he can just miraculously come in and change a side. Obviously, no club wants to be in 23rd, but the Championship's a long, hard, horrible season. And obviously, every season, Sheffield United are essentially a Premier League club. Look at the squad that they've got. It's so difficult, and I think I genuinely think the Championship's the best league in the world. I think it is so competitive. We can talk about Watford in a minute. Obviously, as one of the local teams around here, but Watford were predicted to go down in some people's eyes and are now doing really well in the Championship. And I think with the Premier League, a lot of the time it is the best clubs do well, and you've got clubs like Fulham, without disrespecting them, they slowly but surely climb their way out the table. With Bournemouth, for example, they climb up, they come back down. So, yeah I think Plymouth Argyle are in a position that they are probably not expecting to be in. I think they're a few points less than where they would like to be, but I don't know what they should expect, really.
I mean, they stayed up last season, but it's only one win in 11 matches for them.
Like, I mean,
Plymouth Argyle stayed up because of Wayne Rooney last season, because Birmingham City fell into the trap. They were like 5th. They sacked John Eustace,
yes.
brought in Wayne Rooney, and went down. So, I mean, I can't see Wayne Rooney getting another job after this. Let me tell you.
I can. I think he'll end up in League Two. I think
League Two.
Someone will give him a job.
So who was he at? So he started his managerial career
At Derby.
At Derby.
not in DC.
No.
No, he
Derby,
must have
then
badges.
DC, I think.
Derby, then DC. But then didn't he go back to DC? And then he went to Birmingham.
Yeah,
I don't-
I
yeah,
think so.
I've- I'm
Well,
pretty
he's picked
sure.
up a
I
lot
don't
of
know.
experience and seems to be doing pretty bad. So his whole career is kind of falling apart. However, like I said, I don't think Plymouth Argyle fans should be too disappointed. But yeah.
Swansea 2, Sunderland 3. Swansea were 2-0 up. Sunderland coming back from 3 to win 3-2. Joe Bellingham, man of the moment again. Can Sunderland get promoted this season?
Well, I've missed Sunderland in the Premier League. If I'm being honest, it's been years since.
Yeah,
We've
it's
had-
been a long
Did they
time.
not? Was it a
They
double
got
relegation?
relegated and relegated
Yeah,
again.
they had a
Really,
double
that was the
relegation.
prime Josh Madger Sunderland Till I Die documentary. That was
Oh
the prime
my,
of Sunderland. But now they're on the upward trajectory again.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good clubs in the mix. So you've got Sheffield, Leeds, Burnley. They're already three stable clubs that have played in the Premier League. I think Sunderland, obviously they lost to Watford, for example. They've had their slips, but they've only lost 3 games, which is one more than Sheffield United. So I think this season they've definitely regrouped. They've come back a bit stronger. I know last season it ended a bit unfortunately for them. Obviously, where were they in the league? 16th.
Oh, yeah.
So in a season, they've done a lot to be able to push themselves back up. 56 points in the Championship obviously keeps you up pretty comfortably, but it gets you nowhere near. So obviously, Joe Bellingham's come through. You've got a lot of good players in there. I wouldn't think they're going to come up this season. Maybe the following season, depending on who comes down. But yeah, I don't think they're good enough just yet. I think they've got a young team.
Yeah.
They're getting there, but I don't think they're there just yet.
In the next few years, we'll definitely see them back in the Premier League.
Yeah.
They lost in the playoffs a couple of seasons ago to Luton Town, I believe. So their time is surely coming soon.
Yep.
Let's move on to your beloved Watford. Jamie.
Yes, unbelievable stuff, guys. Obviously, Watford 2, West Brom 1. As I said to you before, obviously, when Oliver was here, I was explaining that Watford, the reason why Tom Cleverley's in the job, easier said than done, is because of the home form. The away form's absolutely atrocious. West Brom were, 11 games unbeaten? They've come to the Vic and they've lost 2-1. West Brom were a really good side.
They wasn't it like 9 draws or something like that?
Yes, it was, but you could also class it as unbeaten in 11.
Exactly.
So yeah, looking at this now, obviously Watford are a game over West Brom, who obviously Watford are 7th, West Brom 8th. 2 points between them, but Watford have got a fortunate game in hand. If they were to win, there's obviously there's not a lot of a difference between the places in the playoffs. I do think Watford are in brilliant form, despite only winning 2 out of the last 5. The 3 draws in that is a tiny bit disappointing. However, it could be the year. You never know. Watford could make a return to the playoffs, and I'm going to the game on the 29th. I'm looking forward to it. Watford are in very good spirits right now. But Watford fans, get to the stadium. Like, none of you are coming to the ground. I'm going there, and I'm not seeing any of you. So you've got to come. I've seen too many empty seats, guys. We want to support the boys. Get them to the Prem, and then you guys will not be laughing at me anymore.
You're not coming to the Prem. Not this season, at least.
Okay,
definitely.
I feel as if we don't get promoted this season, or even in the playoffs, we're not going to come anywhere near next year.
Well, I can confidently say you're not going up.
Chakvadadze's going. Half the team are going to be sold, so that's the problem.
Well, if you take your current squad right now, how many players do you think you are away from the Premier League?
Oh, that's a really good
Keeper,
question.
You said you don't like Backman.
I think the keeper's dodgy, but I don't think the keeper's a priority. Ryan Andrews, he doesn't really alarm me as the best of players. Possibly defence, I think, needs improving a tiny bit. You've got Pollock and you've got a decent 3 choice centre-backs. Just to make that team structure a tiny bit better, improve the bench. We've got too many youngsters playing there. Obviously, we sent Rakovic out on loan to the Danish league. I was about to say to the Denmark, but to the Danish league. Yeah, I think we're maybe 2 or 3 decent Championship players away from Premier League. I think there's a possibility that you could put Watford in the contention now that they're up there. But as I said, it's the best league in the world. Anything can happen.
Right, let's have one focus on League 2. Bradford City 1, Swindon Town 0. It's a game sort of close to my heart. My cousin supports Swindon Town, and Ian Holloway, the Swindon Town manager, believe it or not, came out and said all the negative fans shouldn't go to the away games and support the team. I mean, that is not one way to get on the side of the supporters. And there's always been some conflict between ownership, manager and fans. I was at a Swindon Town game 3 years ago. It was Swindon Town versus Tranmere Rovers. And it was the first game of the new ownership. And spirits were high. Swindon were looking to get playoffs, get back to League One. But since then, they've just been on a spiral downhill. And they find themselves 1 point above relegation, I believe. And that's with Carlisle, who's bottom, having a game in hand. So it's bleak times for Swindon Town. Obviously, a former Premier League club. So we wouldn't like to see Swindon Town dropping down to non-league. And it's just an awful time for those in the county ground right now.
I don't think that the manager's particularly wrong. I think coming out and saying it probably lacks professionalism. All the negative fans shouldn't go to the away games to support the team. I think that's very fair. I don't think that's an unfair statement to make. At the end of the day, he's protecting his players.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's less people now that would be bothering to come to the game, and it does show that maybe he's not particularly interested in the fans at all. I think the fans back you through and through, so they're obviously in a negative mindset because something that they want isn't going their way. However, he's the manager; he decides it. Nothing that the fans can do. But I think he's very fair. I think that's very good for him to come out and make that statement. He's saying how it is. He's not hiding anything. I think that's very fair.
Fair enough. One last focus for you then on this Bootroom Podcast episode, and it's from the Spanish League, La Liga. 2 games, Rayo Vallecano 3, Real Madrid 3, and Barcelona 0, Leganes 1. It's been a weekend of shocks. The La Liga title race is heating up. Atletico involved as well. They are on the same amount of points as Barcelona with a game in hand. Real Madrid only 1 point behind Barcelona, and they have a game in hand. Let's focus on Real Madrid first. They were 2-0 down, came back to go 3-2 up, and ended up conceding late on to draw 3-3.
Well, I mean, obviously it's good they came back, but you don't want to see the mighty Real Madrid having to come back in any circumstance.
Your pronunciations of the clubs are really good as well.
Yeah.
Have you been working on them?
No.
No, they're really good. Yeah, it just goes back to the mighty clubs. You don't want to be dropping points to this club. I don't care what the name is. Real Madrid's Real Madrid. Every club's going to have a slip in the season. Obviously, Mbappe and those players coming in don't make too much of a difference. It's still a pretty interesting league to watch.
And then Barcelona being dominant, 80 possession with 20 shots and ended up losing to Leganes, 2.67 XG. I mean, it's just one of those games that happen across the season, I guess. I'm
really liking Atletico Madrid being back up there. Last season they finished 4th. I really like Simeone. I don't know how long he'll be there for.
I do. He's been there years now, hasn't he?
Well, actually, in fact, if Atletico Madrid win, they go top of the league.
Oh, wow.
That is remarkable.
They won the league since they had, Luis Suarez, Kieran Trippier.
And when was that? Was in 2020/2021.
Yeah.
A few points clear of Real Madrid in second. Unbelievable. I think we could see a bit of an upset in La Liga. I say upset because obviously Real Madrid are the favourites. Then it would be Barcelona, who started the season very well. Atletico Madrid, what an upset that would be to the league, because they've always been the underdogs. Obviously in the Champions League a few years ago. But they're an interesting side nonetheless. They're very attacking, very clever with what they do. So hopefully they go ahead and win the league. I'd rather see them win it than the other 2 clubs.
I feel the exact same way, Jamie.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps up for a second Bootroom Podcast episode. Thanks to Tyler behind the camera. Oliver, we wish you well. We know you're ill at the moment. And
should we do the famous handshake? We always end on a handshake. Bring it in. Bring it into the camera.
In this camera, yeah.
Bring it in, Jason. And across the table. Lads, lovely. And also, look at what we've got behind us. Do you want to explain this?
It's the autobiography of Martin Keown. We're working behind the scenes and possibly could have an interview with him coming soon.
Never know. Guys, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone involved. It's been another good episode. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Cheers.